It's just the way the screen lays out, but I understand everyone is here. It's 7 o'clock, so we'll get started. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to our regular council meeting of January 11, 2021. On behalf of council and the district, we'd like to extend our best wishes and all the best to you and yours for 2021. I think we can all look forward to just saying goodbye to 2020 and sort of look forward to a year that's maybe not as extraordinary, and we'll leave it at that. I do plan on sort of doing a New Year's address. I'm going to save that though for our next regular meeting, and just so that I have something a bit more substantial prepared. There's some items that are in the work for this week, and I would like to share on all of those things in one fell swoop. So I'm going to do that at the commencement of our next regular meeting. So on this note, someone isn't muted. So I do wish to begin by recognizing that we are broadcasting virtually from the territory of the Sauk Nation. Our first item of business, item 5, is Ministerial Order M192. So that is that council is holding this meeting without members of the public in attendance under Ministerial Order M192, as council chambers cannot safely accommodate the unknown number of public participants wishing to attend, and that council is committed to ensuring openness, transparency, accessibility, and accountability through the submission of written comments and the provision of live and recorded broadcasts of the meeting. And this meeting tonight is being recorded and broadcast live. So look for a mover of item 5, please. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Thank you. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor then? And anyone opposed? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Our next item up is item 6, approval of the agenda. So look for approval of tonight's agenda for January 11, 2021.
Is now joining.
Sorry, I was just interrupted by Teams. So approval of the agenda by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Thank you. Questions on the agenda, please? Anything? Comments? All in favor then?
Aye.
Thank you. Is that, yes, Councillor Bateman? Thank you, Councillor. And that carries unanimously.
I can't hear you, Mayor.
You.
I cannot hear.
No, your audio's dropped out.
Is this better?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. There is a button on my headset that I accidentally pressed and muted myself. I didn't know that. Sorry, and it doesn't show up. So we are back to adoption of meeting minutes of December 14th and special December 16th. So I'd like to move adoption, please. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Questions, corrections? Seeing nothing, all those in favor of adoption? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Report, we're at item 8, which is our report of the Chief Administrative Officer. 8.1 is Strategic Priorities Chart Update. So I'll turn this over to Mr. McInnes, please. Go ahead, please, Mr. McInnes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will try and share my screen here. Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes, we can see it. I can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Your Worship. The council report and this presentation are meant to provide the quarterly update for the District of Sauk strategic priorities chart for the period ending December 31st, 2020. So just a little background information. September 30th, 2019, Council approved the 2019 to 2022 Council Strategic Plan. On June 29th and August 7th of 2020, the CAO, staff, and Council participated in a service capacity review workshop. And on September 14th, 2020, Council received the Strategic Priorities chart. The current chart is on the display of the screen now. So the strategic plan includes 3 overarching goals: build a reputable organization, demonstrate climate action, and manage long-term growth in our community. I'll now go through each of the now and next priorities in the chart. So the first now priority is to develop a communications strategy. The communications plan was distributed to council earlier this month and will be introduced to staff later this month. The plan has 5 goals that will drive our communications function through the remainder of this term of office. And the plan is meant to be a living document and will be updated and refined as required. So I'm suggesting that this item can be removed from the strategic priorities chart. The second goal is to develop a solid waste management strategy. A report was put in front of Committee of the Whole on December 7th, 2020, and provided a range of possible lines of service that the district may want to consider. This item will be moved to operational strategies on the chart, and operations will report to council as this progresses and council approval is required. So I am suggesting that this move off the chart as well and go into operational priorities. The next now item was to develop an open air burning bylaw and regulations. And a report was brought to council on November 16th, Committee of the Whole. The report provided some shortened options for shortening the burning season and allowing burning only on days where the venting index was good or better. The report also asked council to consider regulating burning on weekends, long weekends during the burning season. And Bylaw 292/2007 will be amended and with the direction provided by council and will be on the agenda for adoption within the next couple of meetings. And with that, this item is now complete as well and should be removed from the now items. Finalize the building bylaw with step code inclusions. A revised building bylaw was brought forward to council on November 23rd, 2020. The revisions brought a number of requirements in line with the new building code regulations, and the draft suggested some suggestions for early adoption of the BC Energy Step Code. The amendments will be back in front of council on January 25th and will include all of the regulatory changes in the first draft, but it will suggest reverting back to the mandatory dates for the Energy Step Code compliance, and suggesting that this item is now complete and can be removed from the list as well. Service agreements with our community organizations. During the budget presentation to council on December 14th, staff updated council on the work that has been undertaken with the service agreement recipients. Framework for reporting and templates for information required by the district have been developed, and finance will continue to work with service organizations to ensure that meaningful reporting to the district is received. I'm suggesting that this action should actually stay on the now actions until the next quarterly reporting period, and we can have a look at the reports as they start to come in. Off-leash dog park. With the communications plan complete, the first quarterly newsletter to the community will include a section on previous work done on the John Phillips Memorial Park redevelopment plan, which goes back to 2005-2006. The newsletter will identify the Ponds Corridor Linear Park as the location for a dog park. We will need to engage the neighbors and the community and continue ongoing discussions with the Souk Community Association. One of the drivers for an off-leash park is to alleviate the practice of using the ball diamond at Art Ross Park as an off-leash area. And I'm suggesting that this item should remain on the now actions until the next chart update. The final now item on our chart is the Lot A development. And with the Souk Library under development and the discussions with the Souk Region Communities Health Network, which we're working under a memorandum of understanding to develop the northeast quadrant of Lot A with a seniors/youth center and up to 75 residential units for seniors. As you know, the southeast quadrant is reserved for a town center park as identified in the Parks and Trails Master Plan, and the remaining land on the northwest quadrant is identified in the Lot A charrette report as a multi-use professional building with such things as medical, community health, and wellness. It's my understanding that Lot A was identified as a now action with the hope of initiating development on the lot. If this is the case, I think mission accomplished and we can remove this from the now actions. But if council desires to have this stay as a priority until Lot A is totally built out, then it should likely stay on, and I'll be seeking some further guidance from council on the 18th when we meet to redo the priorities chart. The next items, the next item under our first goal of building a reputable organization is our sidewalk strategy. And this action will be accomplished by implementing the recommendations in the Transportation and Parks and Trails Master Plan. The major project for 2021 is sidewalks on Otter Point Road from Souk Road to Grant. This project is included in the proposed 2021-25 5-year financial plan. And if that is adopted later on this evening, then this can be removed from the strategic priorities chart. The second next item is under our demonstrate leadership in climate action goal and is a climate action mitigation strategy. And climate action adaptation and mitigation is really becoming institutionalized in the work that we do at the District of Souk. There's a separate report later on the agenda this evening, and that outlines a framework for climate adaptation and mitigation to continue. If the report and the recommendations are approved by council, this item should move from a next item up to a now item where we can further integrate the work into processes and implementation across the organization, including our new committees that will be up and running later this month. Local economic development strategy. The Souk Community Economic Development Working Group has been informally working since June of 2020. The group undertook a document review of recent planning documents, including previous economic development studies, the District of Souk Economic Analysis 2019, the District of Souk Housing Needs Report, and the Victoria Foundation's Vital Signs Report for 2020. At the December 16th, 2020 special meeting of council, council provided third reading to the financial plan, and if that is adopted later on this evening, there will be funding in the budget for a community economic development officer. Advertising for that position in anticipation of the budget being adopted is already up, with the hopes of having someone in place by April 1st of 2021. So given all of this, I think that this should move up to a now item. The last item on the strategic priorities chart is the Community Economic Development Committee, and this committee is now the actually in the plan we had it as a Community Development Committee. It is now the Community Economic Development Committee, and the committee memberships were appointed by council at the December 16th special meeting. Applicants have been notified, and the inaugural meeting is set for January 22nd later on this month. So this action can be removed from the strategic priorities chart. There are also some advocacy things that are on the chart. All of those items are still important and should remain on the chart. Obviously, council can add advocacy items if desired when we meet next week to renew the chart. And operational strategies, the directors and operational staff have provided up to 3 items that we'll be working on over the next 6 months. These items need to be within the 2021 budget, have dedicated funding, and must have a realistic chance of being completed within the next 6 months. The operational strategies will be included on the agenda when the CAO and council meet next week. And just to finish up this agenda item, I'd really like to thank staff and directors for their focus and their commitment to these priorities. I'm looking forward to meeting with council next week to fill the chart up again. And with that, I will recommend that council accept this report for information, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Quit sharing my screen here.
Just a request, if we could perhaps receive a PDF of the PowerPoint, that would be awesome. Okay, so I'll go to questions and then to a resolution. Councillor St. Pierre, please.
I understand. I really appreciate the report. I like the format and all the information. And I don't want to repeat work that's going to be happening next week, but I was curious specifically about finance didn't mention social procurement, which did come up already. So I was wondering if that was actually should have been in there. And I was actually curious also about the advocacy and the cannabis revenue, because I know that our mayor's been working hard on that one, and whether or not that should be included as an ongoing advocacy piece. And I was just curious about the community gateway revitalization that was also under advocacy. What does that actually entail? Is that with the Ministry of Transportation with what's happening out there? Or is that the work that Councillor McMath has been doing with trying to get water in there? I'm just curious what that's about.
So social procurement, the purchasing policy was in front of council last month. 9.3 in the new purchasing policy does have the social procurement piece. So I can resend that report to you, Councillor St. Pierre, if you can't recall that, but that is in the new purchasing policy that was approved by council. Sorry, gateway. My understanding of the gateway is the signage across the street from the museum. The Lions Club and the Rotary Club were planning on doing some work to that sign. They were waiting for the district to come up with some landscape plan. I've requested some information from Rotary a couple of times, and I'm not sure where we're at with that, but that's my understanding of that one. So it wasn't Gateway as Connie Road. It was that signage piece that was taken down not too long ago, and there's a desire for it to come back up. And I'm sorry, you had one in between those and I didn't mark it down.
It was cannabis revenue, and I'll just share that the UBCM is kicking off its special committee on local government finance. So last year that would have been a committee that I would have chaired, but due to COVID it was put on hold. So it's picking up again, and naturally cannabis revenue taxation will fall under there, and that was heavily endorsed, like 99% endorsed at last year's convention. So that'll be, it's now sort of a BC-wide piece. I don't feel it's something we need to advocate for as an individual municipality. Okay, other questions from members of council? Councillor Logans, then La Jeunesse.
Yes, I just wanted to move receipt. It'll be great to have these discussions at the next meeting. Thank you for your update.
Okay. I'll just go to Councillor La Jeunesse to see if he had a question, and then I'll go back to you, Councillor Logans, to move that. So Councillor La Jeunesse, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to know if we had changed the name of Art Morris Park to Art Ross Park.
My apologies. No, I don't think that's been formalized yet.
Okay, so Councillor Logans has moved receipt for information. Looking for a seconder by Councillor McMath. So the motion's been moved and seconded. Anything further? I'll call the question then. All in favor? And none opposed. That carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. McInnes, for all your work, and obviously to our staff as well. Okay, item number 9 is public question and comment period. I'll just ask our corporate officer if we have any registered members of the public wishing to address council tonight.
We do not. Your worship, we do not.
Okay, thank you. So then I'll move to item 10, which is our consent agenda. So this is items 10.1 and 10.2, the correspondence and the OCP committee minutes. So look for a motion to move the consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Logans and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Okay. See, it is, did anyone wish to remove an item for discussion? Nope, so I'll call the question. All those in favor, please. And none opposed, that carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 11, we have reports. 11.1 is the application process and development tracking. So this was on our December meeting, but then we moved it up just to manage the length of that agenda. So I'll turn it over to staff, please, to walk us through the report, please.
Thank you. I will just begin by sharing my screen.
And we can see it.
Perfect.
Great.
All right, so as actually quite convenient, we just previously discussed a lot of the strategic priorities, but specifically within the current plan, the development process review was something that was identified as a now action item. And so the next few slides will just demonstrate some of the ongoing processes that are occurring, as well as some communication pieces for council to consider and perhaps give staff some direction as we move forward with some opportunities to provide more information to the public and ultimately for council to be aware of what's coming in at similar timing as to what staff is receiving with discussions with prospective applicants. So the first piece that I'll touch on is the subdivision process. It's one that's quite popular and discussed quite amongst the community right now. So currently we have a land development technician. As you can see in my next few slides with the planning, building, and subdivision, I'll just highlight so you can see on the org chart for our department where staffing has been allocated. So we have one land development technician as well as a approving officer that is on contract to help address these subdivision applications that are coming in. And one of the biggest challenges that we've found lately is these submissions have included a lot of deficiencies, specifically on the civil engineering side. So a lot of that requires additional time with applicants to explain what necessary changes are made, as well as indicating reference back to Bylaw 404 specifically for subdivision and development as to where these standards are not being met and to ensure that they are before we can actually final sign off can be provided. So there is quite a bit of back and forth that does make the process a lot longer. And in certain instances and documented in the report, we've indicated 4 instances actually where there are these deficiencies. So as more applications are coming in, we are not necessarily seeing a decrease in deficiencies. So those are increasing challenges going through the process. Another component to this as well is not only is the initial subdivision reviewed and then essentially provided a preliminary layout assessment, which is your conditional approval to move forward with the conditions of the subdivision before the lots can be created and registered at the land titles office. But what we're finding in some instances is that through this process, applicants are seeking to get that conditional approval. And then after that's been accomplished, coming in and making amendments to that process. So while we might have X number of applications that are submitted for a year, those ones could actually be under review for a much longer period of time because now the applicant has decided to make amendments, which could essentially equate to a brand new application, but is not necessarily reflected in our stats that we have. The next piece is, as we move through this, we are working towards creating more coordination with the engineering department, which helps throughout this entire process because engineering is a key piece in moving these files forward. And so as we go through this process, our documentation and communication back to applicants has improved significantly to the point where staff are able to rely on these communication letters back to the applicant to clearly outline what the requirements are. And then at that point, it's the applicant's responsibility to work with their consulting engineer to achieve completion of those items. And the last piece that's of critical importance is, of course, the complexity of these files. One thing that we certainly experience more than probably a lot of our neighboring municipalities is the fact that we have a lot of undeveloped land that goes through the subdivision process. And naturally, with that process, there are additional factors that need to be considered as opposed to those subdivisions that would be occurring in a pre-existing neighborhood where technical studies would have already been completed for those developments. So there's additional layers of review and coordination with referral agencies such as the province to ensure that this bare land is being developed in accordance with the necessary provincial and municipal requirements, as there hasn't been any other technical studies completed to date. So we rely on those technical studies and professionals to provide those recommendations in order to support it. So that certainly adds another layer of what we experience and further help with the development process within our community. You can see at the bottom here of the slide, there's also the statistics that we've pulled from our annual reporting that's provided to council and provided on the website year over year. And you can see at the time when this was going forward on the agenda at the end of last year, we had it completed up to December 8th of 2020. And in terms of new lots being created, you're looking at the third largest number of lots over that time period. As well, still staying quite large with the number of applications that are being received. As well as we documented in the report, while these numbers reflect, while there might be somewhere in the range of approximately 20 new subdivision applications a year, it's really reflective of there being 45 to almost 50 applications actually in process because they're in various stages throughout this time period. So there is quite a large number of files that are actively ongoing, and us as staff working with these applicants to bring them to completion. On the next slide, this is regarding the planning work that's ongoing. So the biggest project for us right now is the official community plan review, as well as the one major constraint that we're starting to see now, and this is reflected in comments that come forward at a public hearing stage, is the rezoning of rural neighborhoods. Opportunities are being looked at by developers and landowners to maximize the subdivision and development potential of their properties. And one of the key pieces that we're identifying at the department level is that the RU5 zone is one of the few areas within our current zoning bylaw that provides for the smallest minimum parcel size for a rural area. And so acceptance of rezoning parcels to the RU5 zone opens up a lot more development opportunity, but at the same time, consideration needs to be given to these rural neighborhoods as to the change in the character. So you might have much larger parcels in the surrounding properties that are now, in this specific instance, one being subdivided up into smaller parcels. So perhaps five smaller parcels on a skinny parcel here. So that certainly changes the dynamic of these neighborhoods. As well, you know, we've worked with staff turnover and training, and you know, we're pleased moving forward, specifically this year, with having a full complement within our department, and we're starting to see the positive results of being able to have those resources available and initiating good communication with applicants and the general public and providing that feedback. Another piece that you'll see starting in 2019 that we've been able to report on is the tracking now of pre-application meetings. This is probably one of the largest pieces as we grow as a community that staff had to dedicate time towards, because there's a lot of interest in the district, and in order to do good development, developers are requesting additional information to make sure that all the technical studies and the key resources that they require to complete the work has been hired on their side. So we're certainly booking a lot of pre-application meetings to make sure that applicants are able to proceed and staff are able to provide proper direction to these applicants in accordance with the bylaw requirements and policies that we're asking for within SUC. With the restructuring of the department, last year and having planning and building under the exact same department, we've seen improved coordination as well on the building side. So that certainly helps with the transition going from zoning to development permit and then ultimately to building permit. There's that consistency and good communication happening within our own department to help speed up the coordination of these projects. And ultimately the applicants are able to make sure that they have all the necessary documentation in place so that we can continue that process in a timely manner. And as always, there's always the increase of inquiries with growing development within our community. A lot of them are just interest-based, but certainly as we're moving forward and more developments being approved and lots being created, there is interest as to lot availability and types of development. We're certainly trying to promote the town center area, and there's been a lot of discussions, certainly close to the water as well, and you know, trying to stay on top and address these priority inquiries as they are coming in. Again, you'll see application-wise, we're receiving quite a large number. Of course, with COVID, the public hearing numbers are a lot lower, but certainly the change to that is the pre-application meetings that I discussed. There's always an increase in those, and the detail that's involved with those, if necessary. We're bringing in other departments such as engineering and parks to help assist with those processes for the much more comprehensive development. So really involving quite a large portion of the organization. Now this is a flow chart that I'm just providing to show the general breakdown of how processes through the land use spectrum could possibly go. So at the very top, you'll see rezoning, development variance permit, and development permit. So once we receive these applications, they come in. They're reviewed by staff to ensure that all the necessary paperwork has been provided, fees and such are calculated. And at that point, when it's deemed a complete application, we're able to send it through the workflow now. And so it goes out on a referral process to make sure that all the necessary agencies and parties have the opportunity to provide input so that we can capture them as conditions or ensure that the necessary policies have been met before we go to the next stage. If there are any issues, this is the opportunity so that the applicant can address them before ultimately going to the approving authority, where if there is a deficiency, the applicant has at least had an opportunity to address them before proceeding forward. Once we reach that stage where the applicant has decided either to meet all the requirements to staff's satisfaction or is wanting to just proceed, we'll prepare a report at the staff level so that it can go to the necessary approving body for the respective process. So typically what we'll see if it's starting at the very beginning is it'll start on the right side of this slide where it's at the rezoning if necessary, and it'll go to council for consideration for first and second reading. If that's successful, we'll then proceed on with the notification for a public hearing, and then following the public hearing, council can then consider third reading. And if that's successful, we'll then refer it out to the Ministry of Transportation for their approval, and then it will return back to council for adoption. And then, of course, if there's any other covenants or agreements that are required, we've ensured that those have been executed and registered prior to final adoption of the bylaw. On the other side, if we're going to move forward through the development variance permit stage, so this would be something that's requiring a change to our zoning bylaw requirements that can't be met. Similar to, as I mentioned, the application submitted, we go through the review process, it goes forward to council, and then council determines if the variance can be approved. If so, the variance permit itself gets registered with the land titles office, and then we notify the building department so that those proper variances can be adhered to and acknowledged at the time a building permit is applied for, so that they knows that there's a relaxation to a specific requirement. Now, probably the biggest piece is the development permit. And so when that goes through the review process and ultimately gets to council, that's where we look at certain things like conditions that might need to be required for consideration. So things like a landscaping plan or any other notifications that we need to have in place before a building permit can be considered. The only difference within the building permit process is that we have the opportunity through the development permit delegation bylaw to have certain applications referred to the planning department for consideration. So you can see here on the screen, there are certain opportunities where this process can be delegated to the director. And those are for any single-family residential developments, any multifamily residential developments, commercial, industrial, institutional developments under 2,500 square meters or less, development permits required for the subdivision or alteration of land or construction, and then any amendments to the existing development permits above that don't exceed the authorities granted in those parts. The caveat to this is there are certain areas within those mentioned that would still need to go to council. So that's if you're going to vary a bylaw, still needs to go to council. If it forms part of a phased development agreement, still must be considered by council. If it's in an area within the town center, those are very specific and must be heard by council. And if they're in any comprehensive development zone, they must be heard by council. And lastly, if the land itself is owned by the District of Sauk, those ones must also go to council. So that there are certain exceptions to the rule, but specifically those are the ones where we are trying to streamline the process and work with applicants where council's determined that the authority can be delegated and the Director of Planning and Development can issue those development permits. On the building side, what you see here is part of the process within building permit review is we're constantly providing for that ongoing training for our building officials to maintain the proper knowledge base to go through the necessary regulations for building code. Again, challenges that we see are the failed occupancy inspections that the officials are conducting and finding deficiencies with specific applications. The plus side to this is it's providing an opportunity to work with builders within our community to explain specifically what we're looking for and providing that training opportunity to help the building community as a whole understand what our building officials are looking for to bring compliance forward for the specific code issue that they're reviewing. Another challenge is illegal suites. One of the positives that we're looking forward to for the next council meeting is bringing forward the building bylaw, which addresses suites a little bit more specifically in terms of definition of what a suite is and providing building officials the tools to identify where it appears to be an illegal suite and the remedies to help ensure that that illegal suite does not continue on to the point where an occupancy is granted and then ultimately the suite becomes illegal afterwards due to whatever modifications are made after the District of Sauk has completed their inspection. So if we see something that looks like it's an illegal suite, we'll have the opportunity now to enter into further discussions with the applicant to identify those concerns and make sure those issues have been remedied. Another issue again is construction that occurs prior to building permit issuance. Knowledge and education with these applicants to ensure that they're not doing this, and if they are, working with them to address those issues and make sure that it doesn't become a bigger issue, and enter into the world of a stop work order. So we want to try and prevent that and just work and educate the building community to remedy those issues before we get that far in the process. As I mentioned through the planning slides, the improved coordination with planning is helping this process and speeding up that process as well. We've also seen, lastly, the highest residential BP intake over the reporting period that I provided here at the bottom of the slide. So quite a lot of activity, regardless of what's happened over the course of 2020. We suspect that with people being home, there's been a lot of hobbies and interests that people have noted around their property that they've thought this was the opportune time to get in and make applications. So it's certainly kept us busy here at the Planning and Development Department in working with these applicants to see their goals. Similar to the planning side, here's a building flow chart. So to simplify the process, the application's received and it goes through that initial review and referred out through that process, and we are able to tackle things like civic addressing and sewer parcel tax, a lot of that back end pieces to ensure that at the time the building permit has been approved and all plans are acceptable, that there's all the other financial and taxation pieces that have been addressed as well on the back end. The engineering review, which is very critical because there might be off-site impacts that need to be addressed or development agreements that have been registered for works and services. So those pieces need to be addressed and not forgotten about, as well as the environmental piece. So as I'd mentioned, there's a lot of natural land that's now being developed. So if there's any requirements from a zoning or subdivision stage that needs to be met and has been deferred to building permit stage, this is the opportune time to address those before a building permit has been issued. Once it goes through that review process and environment planning have reviewed it, and the land development tech has reviewed and ensured all legal charges have been addressed, it can get referred back and go through the standard building permit review process. And that's when they do their, the building officials will do their code compliance review and address any concerns with the applicant. And if everything checks out, issue the permit. And then at that point, it's the standard check-in through the inspection process, ensuring that's being built in accordance with the application that was submitted and approved, ultimately getting to that occupancy stage where we can issue occupancy and the tenants can move in and take ownership and use of the property. So that's kind of the simplified process for the building process. But the key pieces, again, for much larger developments is that referral piece on the right-hand side and making sure all of those pieces are completed so that there's not any long-term concerns that are coming down the road because one of those critical zoning or subdivision pieces was not addressed. So it's all key to the referral process. The other piece to this presentation is the development tracking. So in addition to application processing, development ongoing within the district as well as the tracking of it is something we're exploring. And ideally what we would like to get to at this point later in the year is with the updating of our website, introducing an opportunity to have a development tracking map built into the website so that council, staff, and the public have the opportunity to see what ongoing developments are occurring in the community. And what you can see here is a consolidated version of the attachments that's in the report, giving you an overview of what's occurring within the district. And through this, the intent would be that you could click on a parcel and get a little bit more detailed information, perhaps in a sidebar or in a separate window that would open up, specific to the application details. And then that way, what we see is two benefits occurring. One, the public is made more aware of what's happening within the community. And two, help direct people to this website to gain more information as opposed to increasing the number of inquiries coming into the department. Because certainly that's a component that takes up a lot of time. We're more than happy to have those discussions with applicants, but if they're able to self-direct and find this information a lot quicker, that will probably address a lot of the information that applicants are looking for and allow staff to divert resources to other projects on the go. Certainly, if it can provide at least an introductory piece, we can get into a little bit more detail as well with public as they've gained a little bit of knowledge through this website. So we're certainly working with the IT department and communications to see how this could be implemented in a little bit more detail. But the key piece to this is automating as much as possible so that we can eliminate the need for a lot of manual input. And with our existing Tempest database system, we believe the opportunity is there to attach a lot of this work to specific tasks that are occurring so that when a file manager clicks a task within the database, it will automatically create this information on the back end and create a visual like this map for the public to view. One last piece that I want to leave council with is the communication for council and how we can better communicate with council and ultimately for council to communicate with the public. So the development tracking map is certainly one way. There's certainly other opportunities. So currently in the process, when it comes to the official community plan and rezoning applications, our bylaws allow for a public information meeting. So this would be something that the applicant undertakes to gain information from the public and provide opportunity for notification to the public. It's kind of an engagement process for them outside of the standard public hearing process. So strictly the applicant undertaking this process. Also, what we find is applicants will often ask the question if they can have discussions with councillors and discuss this further. A lot of the times there's concern with this happening after the application has been submitted because it could create an opportunity where information is being shared with one councillor and not the rest. And really, when council is considering an application, all councillors should be open to receiving the exact same information. So we typically discourage this after an application has been submitted. conversations may occur prior to an application has been submitted, and we understand that. But certainly post-submission, it's something that's discouraged. And with a council meeting, that's a legislative requirement, as I had mentioned with a public hearing, that is a piece for communication. So it's all within the process where council is being notified that there is potential development or active applications occurring, and where council wants to be involved in being notified of this in that stage of the process. Similarly, again, with the development permit, council may be contacted, the legislative requirement for it to come to council for a decision, and then ultimately the delegated authority email. So if an application comes in, goes through the process, does not have to go to council for a decision, and the director of planning and development approves the application, a courtesy email is to be provided to council that they're aware that a new approved application has occurred within the community. And similarly with the development variance permit, this would go forward to council as well for a decision, thereby making council aware that there's an active application. So some options for council to possibly consider is one opportunity may be for a committee of the whole meeting, where if it's something of a comprehensive nature, and that's something that staff and council possibly through a workshop opportunity to discuss what files are of interest that council would want to be made aware of prior to submission, that this could come forward as a pre-application submission to council for discussion. Certainly we want to make sure that information isn't shared that would disqualify a councillor, but just to create that notification. Also, being on a committee of the whole meeting, it would enter this prospective development into the public realm, so that then the public would also be made aware that there is interest to do a rezoning in the community of a significant nature. So we'd still need to work on the comprehensive nature of what would qualify for this. Alternatively, department email could go out to councillors once an application is received, indicating for every application that comes in the general specifics of what that application is. On the development permit side as well, if there is a comprehensive plan that comes forward, perhaps specifically to the development in the town center area, that this could be a public information meeting as well. And again, department email to council for consideration. And lastly, for development variance permits, possibly an email to council notifying of this application being submitted. Now, this last slide here is just showing a consolidated option for council. So considering everything that's been presented thus far, the development tracking map certainly seems like an opportunity to provide a lot of information to all parties for consumption. So the benefit to the development tracking map would be we're able to provide updated information as it's being received, and using our database to use milestones as triggers to update notifications within the map itself. So if something were to proceed from a first reading and second reading to the public hearing stage, once staff check that box in the database, it would automatically populate on the tracking map, and now the public would be made aware that there's been a change if they were to go to that parcel again and click it and see that there's been progress in that file. Also, the public's able to view this information so that not just a general status update, but we could have site plans and other information that's accessible to the public, that they could look at that rather than contact planners specifically and ask for an emailed copy. They could see this and get it at their own leisure. As well, if the applicant is proposing a public information meeting, we would request that any information that they're providing, such as the notification letter that would go in the paper or out to adjacent landowners, could be provided to us so that we could share it on our website as well. So this would actually be something that would have to be done manually, but actually come in prior to an application being submitted. So it would be prospective development being considered. And then lastly, we could also explore the automated email option with our system so that if a file is opened, an automated email could go out to council saying this file has now been opened, and if a file is closed, an automated email could go out to council indicating the status of why that file was closed. So a number of options that we could explore on the automated system, but ideally using our database and technology to its potential at this point. And with that, that concludes my presentation, and would be happy to hear discussion on any of those options for communication that council might wish to consider. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Palau, for your presentation and the report. Thank you. The feedback's gone. That's great. Just a question that I have is where it read, you know, an email, an automated email would be sent to council just to notify council of what's occurring. Is there some way then that on our website that information would flow to the website, and then that way, from a transparency perspective, everybody is like, it all gets updated? If we are to look at changing our delegation of authority bylaw, then it would be the case, okay, when council is removed, the public is removed. So it needs to be replaced in some way, or would that all be captured on the development on the map? Would it all just land there? And if I didn't articulate that clearly, let me know.
No, I believe I understand what you're asking there. So certainly the map would be the priority place. If there's any information that's now entered the realm of the development and land use application process, a user could go on the map and get that information. The automated email process would be in addition to that. So it's kind of the heads up that there has been now an update to the map. And so that would be the preference of whether we want to direct users to just go and check the map, or if the automated process is also an additional opportunity to provide in there. The piece for council was you could have that opportunity so that council's been made aware that an update has been made to the map, or we could also have a fillable form that you could enter your email address in for the public, and then anybody who submits a request could get those updates as well. So it's all working with IT and communications to determine how that piece is shared with the public, but trying to automate as much as possible.
Okay, understood. So questions, please. I'll go to Councillor St. Pierre, then Beddoes, then McMath.
Thank you again for the report. I've got a few questions and one suggestion that I'll start with. I love the idea of the tracking map and would suggest that different colors of dots be used for different statuses in some way. There's an overwhelming number of red dots, and if you actually separate them out either in terms of where they are in the queue, where their status is, or when they actually came in, that could actually help us, you know, nail down what's happening most recently or where things are at. And I think that'd be great. I was curious as to whether or not it might be possible to develop relationships with engineering firms to overcome some of the deficiencies that are coming in terms of their work, and whether or not that might work with our social procurement policy. And I'd love to hear your comments on that. Other than that, I was curious as to why the deficiencies existed with the engineering firms. It seems to me they should be able to get the information from our department, from yourself, and not have them. Is it because they're actually submitting applications quickly in order to get an approval to get funding so they can actually get the development on the go, and they figure they'll backtrack to fix things? Why is there a problem here where there are so many amendments needed? It seems like the developers and engineers probably know that there's going to be a problem. They've decided to move ahead anyway. So is there some strategy that we can use to overcome this, or that's it?
Mm-hmm. Sure. I'll start with the piece on the colors. So certainly that's a simple opportunity to add into the mapping and ultimately creating something that's visually appealing and easy to understand would be the process. What we prepared for you was just something that we felt that we could first test to make sure we could get all the information on a map, and then as we go through the process, we're certainly tinker with colors and shapes and everything. The GIS system is quite resourceful in that regard, so we can certainly work with it and change it over time to make it more helpful if we start to see that certain colors just aren't appearing correctly and whatnot. So it's absolutely doable. On the deficiency side of things, what we've been doing is providing letters, providing more clarification, emails, phone calls, going out on site with consulting engineers to identify a lot of these concerns. But sometimes some of the issues might result with just specific practices of specific firms. So one of the instances might be that design drawings have been accepted, and in proceeding forward, perhaps the applicant has decided to direct the engineer and their contractor to do something different in the design work. And so the challenge now is they've gone out and developed something that was not as approved by the district, and we have to work with them to try and figure out how we can remedy it. So a lot of times we're trying to figure out solutions to problems that have been changed without our knowledge until we actually get out on site and do our initial inspection to see that there has been a change from design drawings. That occurs. It's just additional time for us to determine how to do something different than what was previously approved by the district.
Okay, so next up is Councillor Beddoes, then McMath, please.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you very much for this in-depth report. It's been something I've been waiting for 2 years. Just that, even that map, the site map of what's going on in the community. I asked for that 2 years ago, and this is, well, not the first. I've seen a similar one from the OCP. The only thing that if you could give me a printed copy, I think there's 13 pages. Any chance to get staff to print that off and put it in my box for me? I found it very well done. A lot of work's got into this. I know we're not perfect yet, but you're moving in the right directions, especially with the public. They get very, very concerned about the timelines, and I understand a lot of it is certainly not your fault, but again, they don't know, and communications is the key. And it looks like you've tackled a great number of issues that I was encountering. So I just want to thank you for that. And if staff could get me a copy of that 13 pages, please, I would appreciate it. So thanks again.
Just maybe keep in mind, Councillor Beddoes, that it'll be dated. You'll need to put a date on it, because if you were to refer to it 3 months from now, it might be out of date.
Yeah, I understand that. That's just to go on my wall in my office. So in 3 months, I might ask for another one.
Yeah, no, that's good. Councillor McMath, please.
Through your worship, to staff, I'm just looking for a little more clarity, or maybe even candidness, because some of the things you said you then sort of reneged later. So the comment that you have a full complement of staff now and communication is going really great, but then we have members of the public coming to us upset because they haven't received responses from emails in over 3 months. So I just want you to be a little more straightforward in what is it that you guys need to execute everything within adequate timelines. And it's sort of, I love the idea of the map, and I love that future planning, but I really want us to make sure that we're doing the basics properly first before we start to look at these types of projects.
Certainly. So what I meant by having a full complement was certainly within the org chart, there's a number of current positions that have been identified, and we've had kind of rotating vacancies depending on the position. So we're at a point now where all those existing positions have been filled, but that's not to say that number of staff can address all of the questions that the public have in terms of service delivery. We would certainly look at opportunities to increase resources, and with later tonight with the budget and looking for approval so that we can move forward with the request for another land development technician, which would be critical in the subdivision piece. That would help us work towards completion and more, and addressing those service level expectations. I think a lot of this has to do with going through the processes, making sure things are meeting our bylaws, but also who we're communicating with. So a lot of times where we are in a process is very dependent on who we should be communicating with. So if we're doing a design review, it's the consulting engineer that we really need to be speaking with. So if we have the applicant, the engineer, the real estate agent who's going to be representing the applicant afterwards to sell these lots, we've now had an increase of parties that we're trying to communicate with and create a consistent message of what we're communicating to them. And certainly they have different interests. of what they're representing, and it's just additional communication that adds to our process rather than if they manage their communications internally, and then likewise with us, we manage and have our land development technician providing a lot of that communication as well. So it's making sure that the corresponding parties within our departments are communicating with the respective parties from the applicant side. So it's just getting a number of people involved from an applicant side. It just creates additional communication pieces, which is a challenge. The communication is a large piece.
Yeah, but it's not a challenge that's special to Souk either. So next door, a very different community, but it's the fastest growing municipality. Like, how are they handling those communication challenges? Because that's not a piece that's unique to Souk.
Well, certainly, and a lot of municipalities have that, and a lot of it has to do with the number of files that are coming in and the resources that we have available. As I mentioned on the subdivision side, really we have one technician that's taking these applications and reviewing them and making sure that they can proceed on in the process, and then having them sent to our engineering department, which currently we have an engineering technologist and a contract engineer. So those are really limited resources on that side that we're in an opportunity moving forward to build that back up again. But more staff is always a helpful piece to move forward, and it's certainly not the comparable that we have to those municipalities that have more staffing to address those concerns.
The pieces that you've requested in the budget that's come forward, is that going to be enough to catch up on that side?
It'll help us address the ongoing concerns, but if development continues at the pace that it is, it may be an area that needs further analysis. Our goal at this point is to address the current backlog that's in the queue right now, and ideally get to a point zero where we can move forward with those resources. And if that's not enough, then obviously that will have to be a further discussion with council in the future as to how we want to address that from a resource standpoint.
So with the backlog that we're talking about, how are you going to execute the idea or that vision of the map?
So with the maps, there's a number of different files that are reflected in that map, from rezoning, development permit to subdivision. Subdivision seems to be the most critical part right now of getting lots available and on the market so that we can progress to the subsequent stages and ultimately building permit. So in speaking with our approving officer, he believes moving forward that we can get to a point in the next little while this year that we can address all of that backlog and then revisit what's still remaining or new files that are coming online since January of this year. So he made a lot of progress at the end of this year and met the targets that he had set. So all new applications, he believes we can get through those in the next couple months. The only challenge is if there's further amendments that applicants are proposing after the fact, and those are certainly always the unknowns. We don't know if an applicant's going to come in after the fact and want to do an amendment to their application.
Okay, and then the other piece that I just wanted to hear a bit more is, how is planning going after and sort of pursuing the development of commercial and industrial land? Because like we spoke about previously, there seems to be a bit of a lag there. So do you guys have any plans to start to target that, especially given what's been going on lately?
One of our biggest opportunities moving forward would be the economic development community position that we're looking at and is currently posted on the district website. It's a key piece that we can work with. Certainly a strategy developed by that position and in coordination with the official community plan, we'll tackle those. The official community plan review and ultimate adoption will help address a land base potentially to support those non-residential uses, and then working with the economic development officer, going after those prospective opportunities to actually bring them in, work with them, explain the planning process, and ideally get them to submit an application following a pre-application meeting. We've been fairly successful in the last couple of months to get to that point where it's not just been residential and getting commercial developments into some of these mixed-use opportunities, and that's all changing the tone within the community to realize that's what we're asking, and that's the expectation now coming forward with an application.
Yeah, and I hope the tone is not just to explain to them, but rather to pursue them actively, because that's definitely we have our residential tax percentage is incredibly high. It's always the majority, but ours seems to be incredibly high. So I look forward to hearing more about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I have Councillor Bateman, then Logan's, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Paulo. I'm getting feedback here on my nightmare night on Teams. So I'll go back to the phone. All right, so thank you for we've got a then and now reality with the District of Sooke, and what we heard tonight is the now reality. There's an awful lot of information. I can't pretend I understood more than 50% of it, and I will certainly go back and review the video. And hopefully you can share some of the screenshots from tonight, since they weren't part of our agenda package. I'm really pleased to see this development tracker. I know many municipalities who are a little larger and more well-financed than we are have implemented these things. One thing I would like to see in on this tracker is a sort of a shadow footprint of existing approvals. Because we have situations where our local realtors the other week are noting that they're concerned about the shortage of potential properties for their clients. A map like this would show what's upcoming in terms of applications, but also could capture things like River's Edge and West Ridge Trails and other developments that have received their approvals. Do you see that as a possible use for this map?
I'd have to explore that opportunity a little bit further and just see the full detail of what we were providing. Certainly from the subdivision side of things, if it were to be approved, the benefit there is we really wouldn't have to add anything in addition, because now these lots would appear on the map as additional undeveloped lots. I think what you're probably alluding to is the development permit. So if we have a large scale development for a multifamily development, that now that's something that's been approved at the development permit stage or the building permit stage. So those are additional units that are being created. I don't know what the map would look like if it starts to get a little too jumbled with additional information. One thing we might want to look at is actual unit tracking. So, you know, how many current units we have within the district, and then year over year, how many new additional units. We actually provided reporting, as we do for the end of every year, to the City of Nanaimo for the Canadian Home Builders Association. So it's something that as part of our regular reporting we have available, so we could look at unit tracking as a means of showing new stock that's been approved.
Okay, that sounds promising. One other thing that sort of jumped out at me was your comment about the rezoning of rural neighborhoods, and that's kind of alarmed me. I'm not quite. Could you reiterate what you were saying about that?
Sure. There's two things that we've identified, and certainly now with being with the district for a little bit longer and seeing some of these applications, and certainly the volume of what's increased. We have a number of applications over the Christmas break that have come in requesting pre-application meetings for rezonings to the RU5 district. The minimum parcel size is 2,500 square meters. So you can see if you have a large parcel within these rural neighborhoods, that you could carve that up into a number of small lots. And so the challenge there is, if they're successful with the rezoning to RU5, there really isn't any limitation other than access and servicing to those lots, that now you've changed the density within these areas. And probably the comment you'll get at a public hearing is, this is changing the character of the neighborhood from neighboring residents. So that, along with the I believe it's the RU2 zone with the different densities and the stratas that get proposed, there's these little opportunities that developers are able to use based on current zoning bylaw to increase the density in the rural areas. And it's something of interest that staff would like to consider, and at a more appropriate time, after additional research and perhaps discussion with the land use committee, once established, return to council with our findings and possible amendments to address those density issues in the rural areas.
And I take it the OCP process will also explore this this matter.
Yes, the OCP process, if anything, will help identify the character of our different areas within the community, and perhaps have stronger policy regarding rural versus urban development in our fringe areas.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Logans, please.
Thank you. Councillor Bateman, I just muted your video so we can still see your face, but we only hear one of you.
Okay.
I'm a little frustrated by this. I'm not gonna lie. Everything that was presented tonight, I've heard in the past, and it doesn't seem to have worked, except for the mapping. That's a new solution. But really, since nothing has changed, I don't see it as a solution. I think it's just a distraction. It's not really attacking the root of the problem. And communication does come up a bit. I know it's kind of a piece where like council can do more, staff can do more, the applicants can do more, but perhaps even if we can focus on those meetings in advance of applications and have perhaps, I don't know what it's like behind the scenes. Obviously, there are things in place, but clearer instructions to the applicants on what the actual process is, including expectations of timelines for those applications. But like the planning flow chart we saw 4 years ago, 2 years ago, we heard all of these exact same things repeated over to the same council when we met with members of the development community. And we thought that the solution to this was to increase our engineering staff availability and also to increase or to add a staff person. And this is exactly what we're hearing again. So it's hard for me to believe that with similar numbers to what we've experienced over the past 3 years, that this is going to solve the problem. So I guess I'm a bit jaded and not really trusting in this solution, unfortunately. I really would hate to see us spend all of this time doing mapping and training people on how to use a mapping program and connect with our IT department and how to input mapping information. But I also do see the value in having that information, especially like unit tracking and that such a thing. But in terms of solving a problem, it's not going to. It will be helpful for our knowledge and information and for us to move forward, but it's not going to solve this problem. I just wonder if we need to be more realistic about our staffing expectations in this department, and instead of staffing for backlog, staff for future. And maybe we need to put more people there, and maybe staffing is not the solution, but none of this works for me, unfortunately. And I don't think it'll work for the community either.
Okay, no, that's good feedback, Councillor Logans. Any response from Mr. Powell or Mr. McInnes?
Well, I think there's two approaches that we can take to that, and as just identified, obviously more staff would help identify and address the inquiries. Public inquiries take a lot of time. They're unique in every circumstance, and there's a lot of follow-up involved in that, and that's part of the service that staff provide to the public. The flip side to that is the increase in public inquiries obviously take away from staff time to actually work on these applications and ultimately create a backlog. So if we're not to increase staff levels, the alternative is to find another way that we can communicate the information that the public is looking for without taking away from that. So our hope is, and as you had identified, Councillor Logans, is that part of that is the development tracking map, to provide that information to the public, because that's something different that hasn't been proposed before. So looking at those opportunities. So if that can be done and addresses the inquiry piece, that frees up more resource time to get through those applications. And as I discussed initially, the alternative is more staff to address those public inquiries. And it's not isolated to just the planning and development department. You know, a lot of that comes up in other departments such as engineering to address those concerns, because all of the development within the community goes hand in hand. It's just what matter the public is specifically inquiring on that day.
And so do we have a list of these? And I'm sure you do, but like frequently asked questions. And does the map address all of those questions? I doubt that it does, because it doesn't talk, like a map can't talk to you about what you need to do if you change your development plans. And it can't tell you what timeline to expect. Actually, maybe it can't tell you that, but I just don't see that those, like, the root cause questions are going to be addressed by this map. And it's just like the timing of creating this map is probably not good when we're backlogged. So perhaps we need to get even more staff, even if it's on a temporary basis. Because again, we've been in this exact situation with the exact same numbers. Maybe we had 10 more applications one year where we said, oh, well, we just need one staff person. Clearly that's not the case, because that's what we've done. And we need more engineering. Well, we've done that and that didn't work. And it's not on those staff people. It's just the fact that that was not the actual solution, and that's realized now. So either we need to really up our staff so that we can provide that service, and or create YouTube videos on what the process is like. I don't know, but go back to that initial root cause of the frequently asked questions and see if we can answer them before they even come to the table, as in the pre-application meetings and that sort of thing that seem to be working. I just don't want us to get further backlogged trying to create something new that's innovative and fun and exciting, and just end up further behind. I would rather say, you know what, we need to hire 5 people. Okay, let's do it and let's get it done, even if it's some are temp or what have you.
Okay, Councillor St. Pierre.
It's an interesting discussion. I'm curious, based on some of the comments from Councillor Logan's, has there, I imagine there already has been some kind of a workflow study done in terms of how much time is spent on answering inquiries, how much time is spent on subdivisions, and so on and so forth. Has that work been done? Because seems to me that would be, at least if it hasn't been done, that would be a way of actually identifying some of the areas that should be addressed, maybe with contractors, the way that Councillor Logan seems to be indicating. I'd just like to have a response to that. And I'm still curious, I realized I didn't get an answer. Is there any potential in using known engineering firms that actually understand our process really well and actually referring them through social procurement policies or anything like that? I mean, is there a way of actually dealing with some of those deficiencies by using proven performers?
Just working backwards on that last question there. So these are engineers that have been hired by the applicants. So we don't typically recommend specific engineers. If the questions asked will indicate, you know, you can do a Google search and see who are a number of engineering firms that you could hire within the general area, and it's ultimately left up to the applicant who they hire. So that's where this is coming down to at the end of the day, is who the applicant is hiring as an engineering firm. So we're a bit challenged at that aspect. It's up to the applicant.
Do we have the option of offering suggestions? Would that contravene some sort of regulation? Is there a problem with actually saying, we know these people do good work and that your application is more likely to be complete?
Yes, we typically wouldn't make those recommendations, because at that time we would essentially be soliciting work for X firm to do the work of the applicant. We leave it up to the applicant to select, so that we're not endorsing any one firm.
Okay.
Is it against the law to endorse a firm?
Well, we could run into an issue where it's seen as favoritism.
Okay. Follow-up questions, Councillor Logans. Actually, I'll go to Councillor Lajeunesse as a first-time speaker, then Councillor Logans, then Bateman. Go ahead.
Yeah, just I think I would argue that there have been some changes to the way things were done before, and I'm not entirely familiar with the way things were done in the past, but I think by combining planning, development, and building under one umbrella and having a common leadership role as Mr. Paulo is filling, I think there's an opportunity to have a more cohesive group in that department, and I'm hoping that things will begin to move a little bit better. And I think before we get too critical at this point, we should give it a chance and see what comes out of it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Back to Councillor Logans, then Bateman.
Thank you. I think Councillor St. Pierre brought up a good point. And no, we can't recommend specific engineering firms, but for example, one thing we could do is put on our website, here's what to look for in an engineering firm when working with the District of Sauk. And perhaps that's a bad example. I don't know the intricacies of that type of work, but things like when people are constantly asking, who can we hire for an engineering firm, having a page up that says, these are the things that we're looking for can be really helpful. Just backing it up and making it, like when we're experts in something, we tend to forget how simple instructions are so important. And I think that might be part of the problem here. Just lots of miscommunication.
Okay, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I'd like to just echo Councillor Lajeunesse's point that this is an iterative process. I think that meeting with the developers was in 2019, right? In the spring of 2019. Here we are 18 months later. I would just hope that we, so I'd like an honest answer. How bad is it? I'd like that answered by Mr. Paulo. How bad is it? Because it sounds from Councillor McMath and Logans that things are just stuck in limbo here. But you're confident we're moving forward? Question mark.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest pieces that that was obviously of concern was the subdivision piece, because it's critical. If we're not having new lots created, then we're not having the opportunity for new dwelling units being constructed within the community. So in talking with our approving officer last week and addressing and kind of doing a review of what had been accomplished by the end of 2020, he certainly acknowledged that steps have been made in the right direction and that there is opportunity to complete the work that he had set out at the beginning of last year, and to get to a 0 point where we can start fresh with new applications and not be concerned with what's still in the backlog process. So I see that progress being made. There will always be a few of those files that will linger around because of specific deficiencies related to that file. But we're certainly moving forward, and on the coordination between planning and building for the building permit process, we had a lot of big developments approved at the end of last year with BC Housing, as well as a rezoning process that will be moving forward, ideally to development permit stage. So we're able to coordinate and provide some assurity to those applicants that things are moving in the right process, and will ultimately get within their timelines that we're looking for. So it's always on our radar, and we're getting there. And there'll be a couple that won't be happy, and we'll hear about it, and we'll work with them and continue that communication to steer them in the right direction of what we're looking for to get them to completion.
Okay, thank you. Just in my head, I have this belief that the district is moving in very positive directions, and I think what I'm hearing tonight is that is in fact the case. But it's a journey. Thank you.
Well, I think that we've come a long way. There's been addition, of course, of new services that the district is expected to deliver, meaning wastewater and parks. And then with all the growth, both of those areas grow with us, of course. New subdivisions form, there's new parkland to maintain. Council is also very focused on getting our infrastructure in place. So this pulls our staff from maybe working on development applications to the developing our community that has lagged for a long time. As you all know, you feel it, you see it, how congested and just awkward it is to move about. But we're looking to progress that as well. I tend to agree, though, with Councillor Logan's that we have a lot of expectations of our staff. Of course, staff are delivering very well on it. However, if we need to consider adding into the complement, then we need to have those frank discussions so that we don't burn staff out and we take care of them. I feel that we serve all of our constituents, like we all look to do that, and as elected leaders we're expected to represent and to take care of everyone, which I feel council is firmly dedicated in doing. However, we're also leaders of our own district, our own municipality, and our staff within it. So we need to take care of our staff so you in turn all serve and deliver to who you serve, who we represent, but who comes in the door, and that is our developers, the newly landed realtors and the like. So if we're all trying to help out, it's who's who, I suppose. And I think what I'm not maybe articulating well is we take care of our staff and you'll take care of our customers, but we'll all be doing our utmost to serve everyone with the role that we have and the work that lies ahead. And I think that's important. So when we talk about building a reputable organization, it's about yes, making sure that anyone who walks in the door is treated respectfully and fairly. We also want to make sure that our staff are thriving and doing well and thriving and performing within the work. And as sort of your bosses, that is our obligation, is to also care and look after all of you. So those are discussions that we'll have with Mr. McInnes as well. And I'm very optimistic on where we're at, and I thank you for bringing this forward, and we'll see. I think there has to be some way, though, to do, okay, if we have some that are continually sending in the incomplete applications, is the FAQs. This is why you need to do this. You're taking raw land and you're doing X. There's new regulations in place. Everyone is expected to follow them, and here's where they are, just like as an overview. And somehow we need to deal with the incomplete piece. Or if you're doing something maybe to get financing and then there's radical changes, it's a new application. That piece needs to be brought up. Like basically we're starting this whole thing all over again. You're going to do a single family unit and now there's essentially, you know, a fourplex coming in. It's not the same. There's a material difference on how that would impact our infrastructure and so forth. And to start shining a light on what we feel is what, you know, and sort of laying out what our expectations are and why. Yeah, it's and providing that FAQ. This is why it's needed. We didn't invent this. This is a provincial regulation now. So, and these engineering firms, when you look for an engineering firm, maybe some questions to ask. Are you aware of what's current or what's changed? I don't know. I'm just throwing some things, hearing what council has said. And we'll leave it at that, but I appreciate the report. And as Councillor Bateman had indicated, it would be helpful to receive your PowerPoint, not with all your notes, but just the sheets, the slide notes that you presented. That would be very helpful. So then we can look at those and maybe follow up with queries as needed later. Okay, so on that, I'd like to put the motion forward, and that is that council receive, pardon me, the council receive the report for information. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor McMath. Anything on the motion by anyone? Seeing none then, all those in favor, please. And that's unanimous, that carries unanimously. Thank you, none were opposed. Okay, next up is 11.2, Climate Adaptation and Mitigation Strategy Report. So I'll turn this back to staff, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and that was a great discussion. I really look forward to spending some time talking about priorities with Council next week. I'm going to try and share my screen here. And just a note to our guests that are waiting for the next agenda item, you're fortunate to be behind three big reports today, so yours is next, and hopefully this one won't take too much time. Can you all see my screen? Yeah.
I can, Mr. McInnes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Your Worship. This report is in front of Council tonight as a result of wrestling with the need to operationalize the April 8th, 2019 climate emergency declaration made by the District of Sauk. The report highlights the research and planning aligned with climate emergency. And if you've read the report, you'll see that there are some significant gaps identified for local government to consider going forward. But I truly believe that this is a good position for the District of Sauk as we start a new year with a fresh climate action committee and 2 new committees that will shortly begin their work of developing recommendations to Council. So on April 8th, the district declared their declared a climate emergency. Local government in BC has a long history in emergency management planning. The Council report and this presentation will look at other agencies that are currently working on climate emergency strategies and see where some synergies may exist. As stated in the report, there are 4 organizations currently working on climate action that has surfaced as the most appropriate for the District of Sauk to understand and participate with. Those are the Ministry of Environment, the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities, the Union of BC Municipalities, and Emergency Management BC. Each of these agencies have different but complementary work happening that will help define the context of the climate emergency in BC at the BC provincial and regional levels. Modernizing the BC Emergency Program Act promises to bring the climate emergency into the long tradition of emergency management at the provincial, regional, and local levels. The slide that's on the screen now shows the 15 climate risks that that have been identified for BC. Each risk is ranked from low to extreme and plotted on a graph showing the likelihood of an event and the consequences if an event happens. The next 2 slides show different examples of the total consequences for each of the 15 risks. The bar graph shows the consequences of the 8 risk factors that are at the bottom of the page, and the black dots show the risk score for each of the risks in the year 2050. Each risk has an expanded consequence example that includes key findings and groups the 8 factors into health, social, environmental, and economic risks, and also includes the potential cost to the province if an incident were to occur. The graph at the top right shows the risk assessments now and how that assessment will change in 2050 due to climate change. To manage risks and to respond to the increasing frequency and severity of natural disasters driven by climate change, Emergency Management BC is adopting the Sendai Framework, which uses a 4-pillar approach to emergency management. The 4 pillars are mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. A fundamental aspect of the Sendai Framework is sharing responsibility in what the framework refers to as an all-of-society approach to emergency management. The Sendai Framework includes 4 priorities: understanding disaster risk, strengthening disaster risk governance to manage disaster risk, investing in risk reduction for resiliency, and enhancing disaster preparedness for efficient response to and building back better in recovery, rehabilitation, and reconstruction. The framework includes 4 recovery sectors: people and communities, infrastructure, environment, and the economy. And the framework includes a specific local government lens for each of these 4 pillars. The mitigation lens includes policy considerations for building and development, hazard and risk identification, collaboration, and coordination across agencies. Preparedness for local government includes the areas of standardized programs and plans, and collaborative planning and partnerships with others. Response includes better definition of the powers and declarations of states of local emergencies. And the recovery pillar for local government includes incentives to develop strong recovery plans, transitioning out of states of local emergency, and tools to support recovery. This body of work is not complete, and there are identified gaps remaining for local government to consider, but I believe it's a good place for the District of Sault to develop an official climate action and mitigation strategy. I've met with Councillors Lajeunesse and Bateman, as well as the technical and administrative staff to support the climate action and community economic development committees. And there seems to be consensus that this information is timely and will be helpful with our work. And with that, I will leave you with the recommendation that's on the screen now, and happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. McInnes. No questions for me. I just want to thank you for all the work and everyone that contributed to this. I think it leaves us in a good spot as we regroup. So I'll turn it to members of council. I see Councillor St. Pierre, please. Go ahead for questions.
Thank you very much. My first question is going to be more of a confirmation, but based on what I saw with the strategic priorities, it looks like this work, and specifically the work around developing a green lens, this is all going to be integrated, and we're moving into the now portion. So that's not actually happened just yet, and we're on the way, and we're expecting more to happen in that direction, and that'll be good to get a confirmation on that. I was curious about whether or not we could have this very presentation made for the members of the Climate Action Committee, the Community Economic Development Committee, and the Land Use Committee, because they may not be familiar with it, and I think it'd be very useful to them, maybe with a little bit more time to discuss it. Finally, I was familiar with the UBCM Special Committee and the 6 signature initiatives, but I had noted in the past that they didn't include food literacy or food security. And it's been recognized that food security or food is actually contributing over 50% of our emissions, but that isn't often recognized in local government because those emissions are externalized. They're actually coming from elsewhere. We're eating the food, but we're not producing the food, is what it comes down to. But if we're actually going to mitigate and reduce those emissions, then we should be actually considering that. And I'm hoping that can actually be included in the future work. And I think that's it for now. Thank you.
So just yeah, for sure. You know, food security, for example, it's not identified as a risk. So it's part of the framework does suggest that there are some gaps for local government. There is a suggestion that seismic activities, because we're on an island, may play into that. But as far as it being a risk for climate, not part of the 15. So again, that's part of how we need to now bring all of this down to the local level and make sure that both regionally and locally the research that's being done and the Emergency Management Act does consider those local things. But there are some gaps, whether it becomes a risk at the local level, yet to be seen, but certainly not identified as a risk at the provincial level.
Okay, Councillor Bateman next.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. McInnes. As you said, timely, helpful. And when you spoke with Dana, Councillor Lajeunesse and I, you mentioned guardrails and how useful it is to have these big picture documents to just keep us in our lanes and on track. I think in addition to the BC Climate Action Charter, of course, which is the guiding document that we signed back in a decade ago at least, and the Climate Energy and Emissions Plan, these documents are critical. I particularly like the UBCM what do they call them? Signature initiatives, and one of them is social mobilization. And that seems, I think you've acknowledged in your report that mitigation is a weak area that we need to encourage citizens to find ways forward. And this particular social mobilization initiative will be seeking 10 trial communities to engage their citizens on local climate action. And each community would select up to 10 neighborhoods to host up to 10 climate champions. And I would imagine there would be money for this project, and it's up to communities to prove that they're worthy of being one of the chosen 10. So I'm hoping that the Climate Action Committee in the year ahead can look at this. And I know a number of the new appointees are very interested in public outreach. We have groups like Food Chi and Transition Souk and others who could be mobilized here to perhaps do a few projects that will demonstrate that Souk is merits being one of these 10 trial communities. So thank you, Mr. McInnes.
Thanks, Councillor Bateman, and just a quick response. Absolutely, the social mobilization piece is exciting to see, sort of finally getting the policy work. There's a big body of literature that suggests that we know the things to do. Really, where we're struggling now is mobilizing people to do the right things. And on the pilot communities, again, I totally agree. I think that a community like Souk, which is diverse with our urban-rural mix and our various neighborhoods, would be a great community to be part of this, so that the focus isn't just on bigger urban centers.
Okay. Any other questions from members of council? Okay, so we have two resolutions here, so I'm going to separate them, 1 and 2. So the first one is that council directs the Climate Action Committee, Community Economic Development Committee, and the Planning and Land Use Committee to 1, consider the information provided in the preliminary strategic climate risk assessment for British Columbia, territorial analysis and survey of local government priorities for climate action, Vancouver Island and coastal communities, modernizing BC emergency management legislation, and UBCM Special Committee on Climate Action proposed recommendations draft report. And 2, consider the 4 pillars of the Sendai Framework in their decision making with a particular focus on mitigation and recovery initiatives. So look for a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Logans. Any discussion on this resolution? Seeing no movement, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And there's none opposed, so that carried unanimously. And part 2 is that council directs the Climate Action Committee and Community Economic Development Committee to meet jointly in May and November 2021 to share, transfer their respective knowledge. Moved by Councillor Logans, seconded by Councillor Bateman. I think that's a great idea. Any questions? All those in favor? And that too carries unanimously. Thank you very much. That's great. And moving on to 12.1, zoning and bylaw amendment for 5126 Souk Road. And over to staff, please.
Thank you. I'll just begin sharing my screen here. Right, this is a rezoning application, and it's specifically related to the highway improvements that are occurring right now on Highway 14. So the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure have begun their initial phase of the realignment of Highway 14, which is going to result into creating a safer transportation network and a more reliable one at that between Souk and Victoria. So as illustrated on this zoning map, much of the land to the north of the 17 Mile House pub will change with these highway realignment. Of these lands affected, there's about 1.35 hectares of land zoned general commercial C2, and will be removed due to the highway realignment. The total land currently that is zoned for general commercial is 3.98 hectares. In order to maintain the same area of commercially zoned land, the owners have applied to rezone approximately the same 1.35 hectares shown on the hatched area for the subject property from rural RU2 zone to the general commercial C2 zone. Extending the commercial zone north will allow adrenaline ziplining adventures currently displaced by the highway realignment to relocate and continue operating. The rezoning will also allow the owner to develop a small commercial development within the new Gillespie access area that is created through the alignment and underpass area. These services will complement the highway improvements and provide commercial convenience services to an area with limited choices. The lands on which the 17 Mile House pub and liquor store are located are not subject to the rezoning, as these lands will maintain their existing C2 zoning as part of the whole realignment project. So here you can see an aerial and some markups of approximately where different things are being proposed. So as per the Transportation Infrastructure Department's design plan for the Highway 14 Improvement Project, the areas I mentioned around 17 Mile will include a new transit interchange on the north and south side here. So you can just see with the cursor on the screen, these are the bus stops, so the north side and the south side of the highway. And then there'll be a safe pedestrian connections to the north and south sides of the highway. So where'd my cursor go here? So you can see the overpass for the highway itself, but then the connection underneath the highway and the trail. As well, this is kind of the cutout area that you can make a right into this area, which will then loop around this proposed commercial area within this section here. And then lastly, I'll just also highlight, you'll see here these parking stalls. So this would also be the park and ride, so allowing users to drive their personal vehicles, park, and then catch a bus stop at either north or south location as well. So notwithstanding the rezoning, the applicant has also applied for a subdivision to create 3 new lots, which are shown here by the stars on the map, their approximate locations. So the 2 lots shown by the blue stars will become isolated parcels bound by the realignment of the road rights-of-way and the reconfiguration of the new Gillespie Road interchange. The 3rd lot, which is the indicated by the red star, will accommodate the new location for the Adrenaline site with proposed parking facilities, ziplining, and administrative offices. The concept plan shown on the right of the screen shows the proposed commercial complex and the location of the pond. A qualified environmental professional has recommended that the streamside protection and enhancement area can be reduced from the 30-meter setback to 10 as shown on the concept plan. A landscape plan is being prepared by the applicant's professionals to address the recommendations and compensation plan provided in the habitat assessment. This is just a visual of what the applicants are proposing for that commercial area near the pond. So the plan is an example of what a rural style commercial complex could look like, and presented in the report to achieve the compliance with the OCP and the rural residential designation. Staff recommends that the uses will typically operate in more urban areas and require extensive services be prohibited on the subject properties. The applicant has agreed to these terms to propose the prohibitions as presented in the attached zoning bylaw amendment. Staff recommends adding amusement facility outdoor to the permitted uses in the C2 zone to allow Adrenaline to be permitted as a principal use. As well, staff also recommends adding community care facilities so that there could be the potential for a daycare opportunity, and to replace 1 accessory dwelling unit per lot with 1 accessory duplex per lot to allow for an additional dwelling unit for caretakers and/or employees. A development permit for form and character was not applied for under the current OCP because these lands fall outside the community growth area and therefore outside of all development permit areas. A property must be located within a development permit area for staff to require a development permit. The rezoning as presented is supported by the official community plan and Souk's regional context statement. As this had been referred out to the Capital Regional District, and they expressed no concerns and supported staff's analysis of the application. As per the recommendations in the habitat assessment and in the context of the highway realignment, staff support the variance request to reduce the 30-meter setback from the natural boundary of the pond to the 10 meters with the following conditions. That the habitat assessment forms a schedule of the development variance permit, and that prior to issuance of the development variance permit, a landscape plan approved by a qualified environmental professional is submitted and forms a schedule of the development variance permit. The landscape plan will illustrate the compensation plan and recommendations contained within the habitat assessment. And with that, staff supports the recommendation as presented within the council report. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Powell, for the report. It's pretty straightforward to me. I have no questions, so I'll turn to council for any questions. Any questions on the report? And the applicant is here on virtually with us if there's anything we would like them to answer as well. Okay, so it's fine if you don't. It means that the report speaks for itself. So I'm going to go to the suggested motions here. So, okay, so there's sort of three parts here. I'll just do them separate here. So the first part is that council give first and second reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 805-600-83 2021 to amend the zoning from rural RU2 to general commercial C2 on portions of land legally described as Section 118 Souk District except Parcel B DD 32551 and Parcel C DD 681821 thereof, and accept that part thereof included in the limits of the City of Victoria pipeline as shown on plan deposited under DD 132701 and accept those parts in plans 16293, 31342 and VIP 74487 and Parcel B DD 32551 of Section 118 Souk District. So I'll start with that one.
So moved.
Mover by Councillor Bateman and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Are there any questions on this particular item? Anything from anyone? Okay, so I'll call the question then. All those in favor, please. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. The second part is that council schedule the public hearing for zoning amendment bylaw number 805-600-83 2021 in accordance with section 466 of the Local Government Act. So look for a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Lajeunesse and seconded by Councillor Logans. Just a question to staff. When would we have this public hearing? Do you have a date for it?
I believe we'd be looking for approximately just 1 month out from today's date in just trying to schedule this. I don't believe there's any conflict at this time with other files.
Okay, thank you. So it'll be to get the typical statutory requirements for advertisement and the like. So then we'll see this back soon. And just a note to the applicant, sometimes with the public hearing and questions or queries that come in for the residents will prompt us to have more questions asked at that time. Right now, the report sort of stands on its own. So I'll call the question on this, or no, this hasn't been moved, or has it? It was moved and seconded because I asked a question. Okay, so I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor, please. I see everyone. So that's everyone. That's unanimous. Thank you. The last part then, that council, after adoption of zoning amendment bylaw number 805-600-83-2021, approve the issuance of development variance permit PLN 01533 to vary bylaw number 606 zoning bylaw 2013 section 3.22b to reduce the setback from the natural boundary of a pond from 30 meters to 10 meters in accordance with the Aquatex Scientific Consulting Limited Habitat Assessment Report dated July 8, 2020, for the purposes of accommodating a small commercial development with the following conditions. 1, prior to final issuance with the development variance permit, the owner shall submit a landscape plan and conceptual site plan approved by a qualified environmental professional that follows the compensation plan and recommendations within the habitat assessment. The landscape plan and site plan shall be attached as schedules to the development variance permit PLN 01533. Okay. Look for a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Lajeunesse, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Any questions here? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those, oh, Councillor Logans has a question? Or are you voting?
Just a quick question, actually.
Go ahead.
One thing I noticed was that the commercial buildings, one of them was going to be a liquor store. Are those going to be moving then from where they currently are? And then also, this may be through you, Mayor Tate, to the applicant perhaps, and also what would be filling that back space if they are moving?
It's Dean. I guess I'm the applicant, and Justin Wilson is also on as well. Yes, so the liquor store would be moving up to the new place. It wouldn't be 2 liquor stores. And I believe right now it was looking at providing some ancillary space, both for the 17 Mile Pub as well as for Adrenaline. I don't think anything specific was identified for that. And I don't know, Justin, if you're on, you can maybe perhaps also comment.
Yes, I am on. I am sorry, my camera's not working with Microsoft Teams, but yeah, the intent is to move the liquor store, and I think they would complement a market style. And because that building, our current liquor store is now on Gillespie Road, the traffic would drop substantially. So, you know, this whole project is kind of being moved on us. So, as far as MOTI has come along and made it happen. So, we're not 100% sure what we're going to do with that building yet, but you know, we do own the building. We'll come up with some hopefully good idea to utilize it in a low traffic type situation. But unfortunately, that was a good question. I wish you had an answer, and if you have anybody else has some good ideas, we may have a building that needs filling.
I'm sure you will fill it. I think it's going to look really cute down there, but please make it as environmentally friendly as possible. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. Councillor St. Pierre, you had a question? Go ahead.
Just a bit of a comment before this closes down, because this has gone through so quickly, mostly because I think it's recognized by all of council as a good development, something our community needs. But I'd like to have some kudos here to staff, because they considered things like staff housing and our housing needs assessment. They considered our need for daycare. They considered the need to have services closer to East Souk and keep our emissions down. So wonderful development, and that I think is the reason why we're having very few comments. It's just awesome. So just thought I should mention that.
Thank you,
If I may, Mayor Tate, I would just only comment in lieu of the earlier conversations with respect to the tracking process and what have you, that, and I do lots of applications in the city of Victoria, Saanich, North Saanich, Central Saanich, and so on. And I will say that both the planner as well as his assistant, as well as the administrator, Tara, have been very good, and the process has been quite seamless. So I certainly, compared to other projects I have in many other municipalities, it's actually gone very smoothly and quickly.
We thank you very much for that feedback. It's very timely. And I'll just share that when we do move to a public hearing, they do start right after we call the meeting to order. So the public hearings are at the start, and then everyone else is sort of in the queue afterwards. So we really appreciate your patience. It's just the way things order up on the agenda here. But going forward to a public hearing, it would kick off shortly after 7 as it can be. Okay. All right. So I'll call the question on this resolution, please. All those in favor? And that's unanimous as well. So thank you very much. Many thanks to the applicant. We'll see you back here again on the night of the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so transitioning over to 12.2, Council Remuneration and Benefits Amendment Bylaw. We have a report here. Is there any questions? If not, I'll just look for someone to move the recommendation. See nothing for questions. It's that council give first, second, and third reading. Council Remuneration Benefits Amendment Bylaw 806-740-01 2020. Councillor Logans? Moving it. Councillor Logans is moving it? Okay. And Councillor St. Pierre is seconding it? Okay. Any questions? Anything to add? I'll call the question then. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Okay, thank you. Item 12.3, 2021 to 25, 5-year financial plan bylaw 799. The recommendation here is that council adopt the bylaw cited as the 5-year financial plan.
Move adoption.
Move adoption by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Any further discussion? We've been through a lot of meetings on this, so I appreciate everyone's work and attention on this, both all of council and all of staff. This is a first for us and will give us a year to really get going on what our town and community so desperately needs. So I'm going to call the question on adoption. All those in favor? And that's unanimous again. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, staff.
Yes. 12.4. Sucor Sewer Specified Area Revision Bylaw. That is that council adopt the bylaw cited as Sucor Sewer Specified Area Revision Bylaw 804-2020.
So moved.
Move adoption by Councillor Logans and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Any other queries, comments? Too late for that actually, because it's just adoption. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Should I just say it's never too late for questions, but we sort of hope that when we get to adoption that everything you've needed has been answered. Okay, item 13, new business, continuation of virtual council meetings. This is on here because I understand it at time of writing when this agenda went live, we were waiting on what the ministerial order and restrictions was going to be. And so, and of course it rolled over for another month. But at that time, the agenda had to go out. So that's why this is here in front of us now. So this is, staff is looking for our direction. My personal sense is just given the state of things right now is that we would need to continue to meet virtually. I know that there's tech challenges, but remember when we were in chambers, you'll have me saying, turn on your microphone, turn off your microphone. I can't see your hand. The mayor's ignoring me. We have the same challenges when we're in person as well. The generator goes off, the heat turns on, we can't hear, it's too hot, it's too cold, there's bugs flying around. Like there's other distractions that occur in when we're live in camera. The microphones don't work, the webcast kicks out. So there's always going to be things. I think what's important is we're doing our utmost to just deal with any issues as they come up the best we can. We know that hope is on the horizon, but meanwhile, it's important to keep everyone healthy and safe, our staff, your families, my family, and so forth. So I think it's just, we'll get through this. I know we will. And for example, I'll apologize for smiling a bit earlier on a serious subject. My son was naked, dancing in front of me. The dog had opened the door, was running outside, barking, tracking in mud. My husband's in the garage trying to talk to a client. So these things are the realities of working from home. I'm just glad that I can see all of you and that we have the ability to do this and also to record and broadcast and to get the information out to the public. It's really important. So thoughts and comments from other councillors? Councillor Beddoes?
Okay, yeah, I certainly don't have a problem with staying the course, certainly for the went till February 6th or whatever it is. it's pretty clear we're in a pretty gruesome time. But I would hope that as soon as we can get back to meeting, at least as our group, maybe not to the public, that we do so in council chambers. I do miss my fellow councils and yourself working as a team. I know we're still a team here, but it's a lot easier to work as a team when we're all in the same room. That being said, I think that this is the only way we can do it in these particular times, even though you can go to a restaurant and it's full of people, and yet we have to meet here. But I think we stay the course for another month for sure, and then consider maybe coming back as in the council. Just my 2 bits.
Other comments? I think it's just we know the restrictions are there, so we'll keep a, we know they're there for another month. So I think the resolution would be that council council direct staff that January meetings will be held virtually. So moved by Councillor Bateman and seconded by Councillor Logans. Does that work for staff? Ms. Machado, will that resolution suffice?
I suggest that the date be February the 8th. We're going to be in the same situation. The new regs are going to come out on the 5th, and we'll have already had to put out the agenda for February the 8th. So if that we can put virtual through February 8th and then make a determination at that meeting if there's further restrictions.
Okay, I'll consider that is completely in line as a friendly amendment to the motion. So I think that all makes sense. Okay, so I'll call the question. All those in favor, please. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, item correspondence requiring action. There's an item here, 14.1 from the Sauk Arts Council, BC Cultural Days letter, and they were just asking for our permission. I just need to pull up the letter. Sorry, I read the letter and they were just asking for us to endorse or provide permission, something to that effect. Permission to list the name of our community or representative in our letter of participation and support to be picked as one of the areas to be highlighted of the project. Seems fine. Okay, so perhaps a resolution that council directs staff to reply to the letter for the Sauk Arts Council granting our permission as a participant. Will that suffice, Ms. Machado?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, could I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor McMath. All those in favor, please. And that's carried unanimously. The next one is.
Can I quickly point out that they're also seeking a contact person and contact numbers?
Oh, thank you for catching that. Yeah. So suggest Councillor Lajeunesse as our liaison to the for SPA and the CRD Arts, sort of keeps within his folio. Are you comfortable with that, Councillor Lajeunesse?
Sure.
Okay, so we'll just add that. Consider that as friendly and all part of that particular response back. Okay, thank you, Councillor Bateman. Okay, 14.2, correspondence from the Minister of Finance. Minister Selena Robinson is here for your information. Normally they do meetings, but in this case it would be to provide some form of written feedback, of which I don't have anything to. I'm sorry, I don't have anything to write to at this stage. Does anyone have any other comments on this packet of information? Okay, so I'll look for a motion to receive and file. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Any question? Okay, call the question. All those in favor? And anyone nuts carried unanimously. The next one, 14.3, correspondence from Brendan Butterworth Carr. As I mentioned at our last meeting in December, it was the sort of downloading of ECOM or 911 costs to local governments. So here's some of the information that we've received. There obviously must be much more of this going forward. And the mayors of the impacted communities have resolved to sort of get to that piece of information. I've found none of this overly helpful, but I'll ask Mr. McInnes. We've talked briefly about it, just if you have anything further to add. I didn't see it as...
Yeah, I really think that this is a stretch, and as we discussed, Your Worship, on our phone call with Ms. Butterworth Carr, this really is something that's in the provincial agreement with the federal government, and the province is looking to download this onto local government. And she refers to Section 3.6 in the Municipal Police Unit Agreement. That Section 3.6 has always been about administrative help. It has never been about dispatch. So I really hope that UBCM intervenes with the management committee, and the good thing is they've given us until 2022 to fund this, but Ms. Gray has done some preliminary looking, and this could be a significant cost to the District of Sauk. So we'll keep you updated as the numbers start to come in. But suggesting that this is under 6.3 of the agreement, not my experience, and I've been administering these agreements for the better part of 15 years now, and it's never been part of 3.6. So 3.6 is we're obligated to have municipal admin staff, and they can either be provincial employees where we pay 100%, or they can be municipal employees where the 70-30 split is in play. But it's never been about anything above and beyond that.
So, Mr. McInnes, I feel that we should respond to this and sort of just highlight what you've said just to start this initial phase. Like, I know that UBCM will do some work, but UBCM's role is to represent all of BC, whereas this is only now hitting a small, it's not even hitting all of the South Island because of how the dispatch is. So I just want to, you know, I feel it's important just to start the letter writing and just saying exactly what you just stated in a letter format. And the second piece is that it still doesn't tell us what the cost is. So if we're trying to put together a 5-year plan, and again, and potentially having to hold off on the hiring of a needed police officer because we don't know what this cost is going to be, they need to be more forthcoming with that information. I don't want to be sitting here next year in, it's 2021 now, but suddenly your share is, if it's $20,000, I can deal with that. It's if it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's and then what? Like how I'm just really concerned. So I just want to write back and then also ask, when are they going to provide some more transparency around the financial impact? The percentages don't mean anything. It's 30, you know, is it 70% of what? So I think we should start writing something.
More than happy to draft something, and you and I can work together to make sure it's got everything. The other important piece is, you know, how can a small group of municipalities be targeted? But at the same time, we heard from Ms. Butterworth Carr that this is going to be changed province-wide. It should be changed province-wide at the same time, in my opinion.
Yeah, I do agree. Okay, Councillor St. Pierre.
This is a question for yourself, your worship. Is there some meeting or body that gets these particular mayors together to discuss this together? Because it seems like it would be more effective to do that as a group, but I don't know if there's an opportunity.
There isn't really. It was the case where I received a letter and it was pretty much, oh, I'd like to invite you to attend this meeting where we're going to talk about X. And I'm like, okay. And then, you know, I replied and then got the meeting details. but I had no idea what the meeting was going to be about. So I asked Mr. McInnes to attend with me, thankfully. And then we're all there, and not even every mayor was able to attend. So those that weren't are probably thinking, oh my God, what did I just miss here? And then that's it, because of who, you know, who it's involved with. So it's Colwood, Ladysmith, Langford, North, like I can't even gather the CRD. It's not a CRD issue because we're involving like North Cowichan, Ladysmith, and it's not necessary. It is kind of the West Shore, but then it's also North Saanich and Sydney. So there isn't. It's sort of up to us now. So Mayor Sebring has sort of said he's going to look to find, but it's hard. It can be really hard to get all the mayors on a day. Like you run so many doodle polls till you finally get something that lines up. So in the event that something, and we all know that. But there really isn't an entity. So I think this is where it's just, you know, I will look to gather and meet with those mayors to share information. But in the meantime, I want to start documenting we received this letter, here's our response, and go back that way, because I was just floored when I found out that this was what they were intending to do. So it's hard to plan. We're a growing community, and now we have to plan for this. And part of it is, I believe the feds in the province collect some levy on phone bills for 911. So do we get to share in the revenue for that? We should, if we're expected to now deliver this service. And then what about the governance? Do we have any say in how the governance of this is all being done, or are we just going to be given the bill each time? And to date, there's no numbers. So are we just supposed to blindly sign off on an invoice and trust? Like, it's not, I don't know. I just, there's no trust here because I don't understand what's happening and where it came from. There was discussions that were held. We weren't at the table, and now it's like, oh, we've decided that you're going to pay the bill. Well, thanks, but no, thank you. Don't want it. I always say when it comes to advocacy, we have to be careful to upload the download, and that's what we're doing here. So I'll look for council to direct our CAO to work with the mayor to comprise I think part of it is, okay, a motion to receive this correspondence and also to formalize a response in writing back to the ministry. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Thank you. Anything further? I'll keep you posted. All those in favor? And opposed, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. And as we get that information, we'll be sharing it with you. And I think it's just important from transparency perspective that the public understands that this is a big moving piece here. Okay, item 15, council verbal reports. I would like to start by wishing Councillor McMath a very happy birthday. And thank you for joining us. Many happy returns.
Guess you can legally drink now, eh?
In all countries and states around the world. Okay, so see does anyone have anything to report out at this stage? Councillor Beddoes, go ahead.
Yeah, just that I got a letter from Mike Thomas from the food bank thanking us for $150 for the drivers and an explanation of how he gave it out. And one very interesting comment is that when they tried to give it out to the drivers delivering those hampers for Christmas, they kept saying no till they found out that it was actually the District of Sault that was paying the $25 gas card. Then they took it. So it's just an interesting thing. Anyways, Mike gave a nice letter and accounting of the money. I gave to the CAO.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Beddoes. Other reports out from members of council? Councillor Lajeunesse, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to wish everybody a happy new year, and I was really hoping that 2021 would present us with some better news, but so far it hasn't panned out. Hopefully it'll get better in the weeks to come.
Okay, thank you. Other comments or reports out? So I have a couple of things to share. So as you know, I've been chairing the Mayor's Primary Health Working Services Group and have also participated with Island Health on the SUC Planning Steering Committee. And a lot of this, the SUC Planning Steering Committee formed basically to get the clinic expansion underway, to plan for it, to make it happen, and to have it open. So that's been done. The next phase of the work was, okay, that was short term, and what's next? And because of COVID, all of that has been disrupted, and it's been difficult for these two groups to meet. Essentially, it's almost the same membership, but obviously just due to the busyness, the practitioners had to choose one or the other. So we've sort of decided to merge the two groups together. It'll be called the SUC Health Committee until perhaps something more creative comes out, but that seemed to work. And it'll be putting the membership of both groups together, and I will be co-chairing along with the executive director from Island Health, Ms. Sarah Crawford-Bull, who took over from is taking over the portfolio from Marco Pallingham, who's moved to a different position with Island Health. So the sort of inaugural meeting of this will kick off this Wednesday, and then together the committee will sort of look at terms of reference and frequency and so forth. It's on a Wednesday, and I've just asked that it shift over to a Thursday because Wednesdays just collide too much with CRD appointments, but it'll likely meet every 2 months and carry on in that way. So that's one initiative that's underway. Also, the SUC Shelter Society, just through the work with homelessness, pre-COVID had started doing work in terms of what does a SUC coalition to end homelessness look like. So that work has in fact picked up again, and there's, for those of you that were attending sort of the community-wide events, there has been an improved sort of terms of reference. Searchin, who had also been dealing with some of the administrative pieces, also want to transition it over to SUC Shelter Society as well. So I'll be co-chairing that coalition with a member of the SUC Shelter Society, and it'll be the SUC Homelessness Coalition. The intent is not for us to be just a division of the Greater Victoria. Both myself and SUC Shelter would also be welcome to attend those board meetings so we can understand what's happening in the region. But the intent here is to focus and to continue to focus on solutions based out of SUC. I'll add the one piece with Island Health that's been offered, though, is access to their mental health team. And that's something that is really important out in our community. So just having the ability to access those resources will become very important. So that's underway. And then the other initiative I've involved in is with the South Nation, and this is a housing solutions lab. So the intent here is with the similar to the II project is housing solutions for Indigenous peoples on Selk lands. We've had tremendous growth within our community, but there has been no growth in housing stock on Selk lands. So the intent would be looking at what does that look like? What do we do? What are the barriers? And some of it is infrastructure, but there's likely more than that. So the intent is to co-create housing strategies for all residents while nurturing Indigenous health and wellness and embracing the best of Indigenous and Western knowledge systems. So it's exciting to be a part of that. A lab isn't about solving the problem, but addressing the influences in the system that produces the problem. So I find it to be very innovative and very exciting work, and sort of reconciling ways of knowing. I'm just sort of looking at some of the notes that I've taken here. And again, all of this is done on Zoom or Teams or some other platform, given the state of the world, but I'm very grateful to have the opportunities to participate on these. So that's sort of been what I've been up to since the start of the year. And then in addition to just sort of trying to get into some kind of a routine for the sake of my household. So we'll see how well that goes. So on that note, that takes us to the end here. So I wish you all very well. Wish you all good health and wellness as always. It's wonderful to see you all. Many thanks to staff for being with us and for your work and efforts, and to any viewing members of the public. We're thinking of you and just wishing you all the very best in this year. So on that note, I'll look for a motion to adjourn, please.
Your
So
worship, we
moved
have a rise
by-
and report to do first.
Oh, that's right. We have a rise and report. And that would be for the SUP Program of the Arts. So pleased to, council has resolved that Mr. Diego Navarez be appointed to the SUP Program of the Arts Committee, and my apologies for mispronouncing your surname. And I believe that was the one?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, that's our rise and report. Now we'll go to a motion to adjourn, please. So moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor McMath. Take care, everyone. All those in favor of adjournment. And Councillor McMath, you're opposed? So want to do some birthday fist? I'm kidding. Okay. All right. All the best. Enjoy what's left in the night to celebrate your fabulousness. Take care, everyone. Motion to carry to adjourn is unanimous. Okay. Good night, everyone. Be well. Thank you.